All right, so we are live. So welcome everybody back to the next episode of Crew Chats, where we're going to talk about lead lifecycle and the revenue modeler. Before we get started, we have a couple housekeeping items to take care of. First, obviously, if you've missed any previous episodes, you can catch them here on this YouTube channel or in the Marketo community. We'd prefer it if you engage with us in the Marketo community, just because that's what we're all about, and the full library of stuff is there, as well as like a whole just amazing place for all things Marketo. So that aside, if you'd like to tweet at us or follow us on Twitter, our Twitter handles are below, as well as the hashtag Crew Chats. We'll be monitoring that throughout the chat. So if you have a question about this chat in particular, feel free to share it there or post in the community, and happy to continue the dialogue there. Finally, just want to do a quick round of intros and our favorite random fact of the day. My name is Joe Wright, strategist at Fathom, and today's random fact is our favorite random fact, and mine is the origin of why walking under a ladder is bad luck. So basically it's a triangle. Triangles are symbols for the Trinity and like life and whatever. So if you walk in the middle of it, it's just bad juju, like you're coming in between the Trinity, or taking your fate in your own hands. So Dory, why don't you go next?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Dory Viscagliosi, Senior Marketing Operations Manager at Datto in Norwalk, Connecticut. And my favorite random fact of the week, or all the time, is that, wait for this one, you guys, because y'all all really appreciate this one, with the honey thing and everything else for babies. Babies are also born without kneecaps.
What?
Yes.
That seems wrong.
Sorry. When do they grow? They grow after they're born. I don't know, but babies are born without kneecaps.
I'm appalled.
Sorry.
There's a mafia joke somewhere in there. Jen, why don't you go next?
All right, I'm Jen DiMaria. I'm a marketing automation consultant at Rev Engine Marketing, and my favorite fact is that when a male penguin falls in love with a female penguin, he will search the beaches for the perfect pebble to give her.
That was too inspiring. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I'm Jeff Krajewski from PR Newswire. I'm a marketing automation specialist and Marketo champion, as are most on the call. Mine is more of a quote, but it is a fact. It's from Lord Kelvin, and if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it.
I'd take that as fact. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I do marketing operations and growth management for an ad tech company called Tube Mobile in the Bay Area. And mine is going to totally counteract Jen's mushiness about penguins. But some of you may know that female praying mantises eat the heads off of their mates after they copulate.
So that was a dark turn.
I'm wearing black today. I figured that's like, that's the color of my heart today. It's fine.
As do many spiders, though.
And I am the animal.
Smugs, are you out there? Is your audio working?
Not
dropped.
on today.
So in Smugs' absence, Jules, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Jules, Assistant Professor of Marketing at St Edward's University. My random fact, I'm not sure if it's a random fact, but if you have hiccups, to get rid of them, say strawberries very slowly in the poshest English accent you can get, and it will get rid of hiccups completely.
So there's an R after the W, right?
Strawberries.
Strawberries.
Strawberries. Yes.
Cool. Well, sweet. So with all the intros aside, we're going to just jump right in. So MQL, SQL, OMGs. The last time you probably looked at a report in your, or when was the last time you looked at a report in your sales funnel process? Were you able to show not only the number of leads at each stage, but also your conversion percentages? And really just understanding the knowledge behind that is going to help you understand how the lead lifecycle and Marketo's revenue modeler comes into play. So it's possible you're sitting there saying, duh, but more likely you're sitting there waiting to hear exactly what we're going to talk about. And this isn't really straightforward stuff. It's really easy for many organizations either to overlook the life cycle model or just implement it a little more complicated than it ought to be. So fortunately, we have a few revenue cycle analysts, certified, whatever that is, on the line, and happy to discuss what is the lead life cycle. So to level set a bit, what I'm going to do here real quick is, so I have a slide here that I've used in past lives that shows a very basic revenue model. And this is kind of like, I think along the lines of the Serious Decision waterfall model, where there's a few exceptions here, but basically you see the various stages here across the middle, from anonymous to known to engaged, marketing qualified, sales accepted, opportunity, and won, as well as there's a few different phases of the funnel. And as you can imagine, this is a funnel on its side, as well as some transition rules. So you can be rejected or recycled, and that kind of thing. So this is, I think, a great opportunity for us to open this up to the floor. What is the ideal lead lifecycle model to everyone on the line, or like what exceptions to the model we just shared jump out at you?
Well, I can actually start and just say this is kind of basic, and I don't know if it's actually answering the question that you just asked. But one thing to just think about as we're talking about lead life cycles and stuff is make sure that your things are named in a way that makes sense to you as well as other people at your company. Because when we first set up our lead life cycle, we had, I think it was a standard Marketo one, and it had 2 phases within that early stage where you're engaging with your leads, and they were called the lead and the prospect. And when you're talking about leads and prospects, those have 2 very different meanings, even within Marketo as well as within Salesforce. So if you're using a CRM, which I'm guessing most of us are, that's just something to keep in mind. You probably want to name things in a way that makes sense across all platforms.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. That when you guys are designing a model like this, who do you bring to the table? Like, is it just marketing? Do you create it in a vacuum? Or
no, you definitely got to have sales on the call or the conversation. Everything after it's qualified and it becomes an opportunity, there's integration with CRM and otherwise, be it whatever CRM you're using, that you have to have those stages defined because they get mapped in 2 systems, not just the singular Marketo system. So you want to make sure that it's aligned, that there's agreement, that there's buy-in from all parties, and everyone's being heard. One of the things I've learned in the past is if sales, of course, doesn't accept it, it's not going to win, and you're not going to be successful. So one of the things you want to make sure is you always have that sales buy-in. And something I've learned personally is even if you've got that eager salesperson, that one person that wants to go after it, go and try it, try and tap in, and you can try and leverage that experience and what benefit you actually add from marketing through that pipeline to their experience.
Yeah. Is there any other groups apart from sales that you normally bring in? Anybody?
I think it all depends on the industry as well, because I learned yesterday, having spoken to our Marketo team in the university, you don't have sales in a university when you're trying to recruit students.
Sure. Yeah.
So you can't have the sales team. So the way that they use Marketo, one, they use completely different language. They don't use MQLs, SQLs. It depends on the life cycle that they are in this stage to, for example, becoming a grad student, inquiry, application, etc. But again, they don't have sales teams. So actually, it's not necessarily sales. It's whoever is involved in that buying process or purchasing process. They're the people you need involved. It needs to be everyone, whether it be sales or it could be in education. It could be the people who deal with the admissions, for example. And
just one other thing to mention is that if you're thinking complete lead life cycle, you have to think post-sale. So service a lot of times comes into play, and you need to map out that service route, and there's a lot of untapped potential when you're talking about service teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's especially important when you start to talk about things like SLA stages and, you know, getting into the reality of like how fast can something happen in the model. One additional party that you know, because in past experience, I've always had an inside sales team and then, you know, field sales. So making sure that all parties involved kind of know the routing, the expectations of what is going to happen when someone gets to this stage in the model. Who's going to be the one following up? Who's going to vet the lead? You know, what tasks are required to you know, either accept or reject the lead, and how long do they have to do that? So there's obviously inside sales and field sales, and then the other group that I think is important is if your organization is split like this, you might have someone that's a Salesforce admin that's not really on either team, but they're going to be instrumental in making sure that, as far as all the back-end rules you have within your CRM. So Salesforce admin / CRM guru, that they're able to basically set everything up and keep it running well for you with all the different rules that are inherent to your CRM.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
A lot of times that's sales ops. You've got sales ops, marketing ops, sales, marketing. And so you really need to get that alignment from all of the teams. It's much more than just a single team setting this up.
Said the senior sales marketing ops manager at Datto.
No. Come on.
Though, like, what about C-suite? Because I've been in the position where C-suite wanted to know things, but they didn't really have a definition of what was going on. And so you almost had to redefine your entire process so you could report to them.
I set up a workflow to show my C-suite. So like if my head of sales or even, you know, my CMO or even my CEO comes to me and says, hey, how do these leads work? I can direct them to a specific spreadsheet in our, like on Google Drive. Not the most secure, I guess, but yeah, it's on Google Drive, and it's just like everything works. So it's like a really in-depth workflow of the entire funnel, I guess, and like who's involved where. And then if they want to know extras, I can give them, you know, oh, these are the sellers we're working with, or, you know, we don't have an inside sales team, I think I've said before. So we had to figure out how to circumvent that and really align with sales ops and our enterprise sales team, as we call them.
Yeah. So like once you have those players defined, what's the goal of that meeting? What are you looking to accomplish when you sit down and say, we need to build this model, and we need to know how Marketo is interfacing with this lead lifecycle and how CRM is? Like, what are some of the key goals coming out of that meeting that you have?
Definitions of terms. Because we had, in a previous company, when I started, they were talking about tombstone leads. And I was like, what the heck is a tombstone lead? So
I should have worn my I'm Your Huckleberry shirt.
Oh, yeah. Tombstone is basically, their definition of a tombstone leads was the amount of information you have on your tombstone. That's all they wanted to become a marketing qualified lead.
What?
Yeah.
What I would have thought. I would have thought it was someone who was dead.
No, tombstone. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, because I thought, oh, tombstone leads, we don't want those. They're bad leads. No, these are the people that we had first name, last name, email, telephone number for. That's what got passed through to the equivalent of the inside sales team. So it took a lot of re-education, and it takes re-education in both organisations I've been in. What is an MQL? What's an SQL, SAL?
Yeah.
And it's not just us talking to them and saying this is what it is. It's making sure they have an input in what we class the definition is, because each company is different.
Yeah.
That was my biggest challenge.
And dovetailing on that into Rachel's previous point, the terminology between your CRM and your Marketo instance, like prospects, leads, contacts, gets so muddy so quickly. So to your point, getting good definition around what each of those means and what it is, I think is just foundational to any good conversation about where this is heading.
Yeah, I think if you have sales or whoever, all the departments involved at the beginning as well, it makes it so much easier when you start introducing SLAs.
Yep.
You can say, well, this is what we agreed because this is your definition that we agreed.
So just to level set on SLAs, so service license agreement, which is not really a super intuitive term if you've never come across it, but basically, someone want to break down what an SLA is?
Service level agreements are usually the terms on which follow-up is agreed upon between the teams.
Yeah.
So in my instance, we have a qualified warm and a qualified hot lead, depending on certain scoring aspects. And depending on the form fill and how it goes, there's the need for the team to either follow up for us within either 2 hours if they're hot.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's an actual call on the telephone for the qualification team, or for 4 hours for a warm lead. So we have certain forms that we refer to as an accelerator form, or really a hand raiser form, as many would know it as.
Sure.
A hand raiser is someone who you know for sure is interested in the product, interested in your service, what have it. And you want to follow up immediately with them to make sure that you're getting that first touch point. So again, depends on your industry, on your business, but that SLA is that agreement on how quickly is there a follow-up, what is the commitment from the handoff to the next team.
Yeah, and I think when you start to think about it in terms of like, okay, so I generate an MQL through whatever thought leadership, content marketing, whatever I'm doing. Sorry, that's my dog. Sales needs to have that window of time, right? But then with that, they also need to know kind of like communicating from this meeting that they need to know what is going to be expected of them in terms of like following up, in terms of is an accepted or rejected lead. And then in addition to that, I think a good key point of communication just to establish from the get-go is anything you do lead lifecycle wise is not going to be perfect right out of the door. That it needs to be just like lead scoring. It's kind of a guess, check, recheck, guess again thing. So as you're dialing in your lead scoring and as all those other factors that are inherent to that process, what you're serving up as an MQL today might be different than what you're serving up in 6 months, meaning like you're going to get a better idea of what an MQL truly is, so that when you look at these SLAs, if they've got 2 days or 2 hours or whatever it is to vet the lead, and you're finding that, okay, you've generated 100 MQLs, only like 5 of them turn out to be sales accepted, like actually qualified leads, you have some work to do on your scoring model in that scenario. So a good goal of this meeting is really building that credibility, that relationship with sales, knowing that it's going to be a conversation around this life cycle is our best educated guess on the front end. And then as we move closer to, as we move forward, we're going to get more and more data around what we can do with it and how we're measuring like how qualified a lead is. So when we give you an MQL, you know that lead is qualified and you know they're going to they have a very high probability of converting, versus the other end of the spectrum where you just torpedo yourself and say, I'm going to have a very low threshold for MQLs and then just let sales follow up. You're going to get a lot of ill will from sales on that. You're going to waste a lot of their time following up. And soon as you start to lose that credibility, you're going to lose a lot of buy-in for what marketing automation can do for your business.
Very true. And one of the things that also to speak to is, as you do ramp up and you first turn on things like Marketo Sales Insight and allow that for the sales team, what happens is it's based on the total number of scored and qualified leads. So the flames and the stars that are presented, you have to take that into account, and it's constant optimization. So you may come back and in our instance, we have quite a high scoring threshold. So
yeah,
the stages are very well defined. A lot of people start out small, and that was one thing in a past job that we did. And we found that, okay, maybe we want to come back to the drawing board, and having to reset scores, having to reset stages can sometimes be a hassle and more of a burden on sales op or marketing ops or the team that's required to do so, but sometimes resetting or starting back from scratch is a necessary evil.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, something that not to really digress into scoring too much, but doing lead grading outside of scoring, so taking in demographic data with the behavioral data for what really drives scoring, and then somehow marrying those two up. You can do it in Sales Insight, you can do it via custom field in Salesforce, but it's just another step you can take to make sure that the MQLs you're serving up are somehow more prioritized or qualified. Because at the end of the day with Sales Insight, all you get is 3 stars and 3 flames, which is not a very super granular level of detail. But with a kind of predefined grading model that you can train your sales team up on, like if it's, how we talk about it at Fathom is like an A1 is like primo. They've got a good demographic, their job title indicates they're probably a decision maker, and their behavioral data suggests that they're really engaged. Follow up with that lead immediately. Versus, like a D4 means like their title is kind of mid-level or not a decision maker, most likely, and their overall quality is they're kind of engaged, but focus on the A1s, A2s, A3s, B1s, B2s, and so on. So you kind of get the idea of how you can get a little more granular with how you serve up an MQL.
Yeah, decision makers is a key factor there.
Yeah.
Finding that ideal target versus the typical or that ideal or the top dog. That a lot of times when you're creating your personas, that's something that you want to take into account.
Yeah. So to kind of back out of the rabbit hole I started to lead us into, when it comes time to do reporting, like what are the things in terms of your life cycle model, what are the things you want to measure? What are the things you want to be able to report on?
We definitely measure like pipeline velocity. I know that we can also measure that we also obviously look at the, deal size and number of deals and close time and all of that stuff. But we also look at, how long are we as marketing moving people through from an MCL to an MQL? And then after that, how long does it take for sales to move that person from the SAL stage through to the customer stage? So we're looking at all of that. We're trying to, basically you want to decrease the time it takes them to get through and increase the number of people who are getting through the entire funnel, basically start to finish. And one thing that we run into also that we keep in mind in the back of our minds is like, once we hand that person off to sales, it's mostly in sales's hand. Yes, we can nurture. Yes, we can, recycle and all of that stuff. But if my sellers aren't doing their jobs and following up with the leads, then that, I need to communicate to upper management that that's a problem. And if they're not, like we talked about earlier, if they're not following up because they're not qualified leads, then we can reevaluate that on our side. But if we are handing off qualified leads and they're not getting followed up with, then that's a problem that we need to discuss. So, but we definitely measure speed of time and quantity of people going through, because you kind of compare quantity and speed and you kind of get your quality, I guess. You could come up with some sort of quality calculation on that.
Yep. And that's exactly why the SLA stage is so important. That, it's happened to me in past experience where I made a crap load of MQLs, but no one was following up on them. So with an SLA stage, we would have been able to report on that and provide the data around, they had 2 or 3 days or however long it is to follow up on the lead and mark it as accepted, rejected, really qualify it, but they didn't do it. So, there comes a point where it is a little bit of a dance between sales and marketing. You need to show that marketing is serving up what sales needs. They're giving them the opportunity to fuel themselves, but that sales has also got some skin in the game, and that they're following up as appropriately and as they should. And that kind of thing. So what I heard out of that was you want to measure the number of MQLs generated, the number of those that are being accepted by sales, and try to get some kind of ratio so that that it's relatively high. You're serving up quality leads. You want to have an idea whether your strategy, whatever you're doing to move leads to that MQL stage of the funnel, is effective. And the biggest thing I think I heard you say, Rachel, was the lead velocity and knowing like what moved them, like understanding what was the impetus to move them from one stage to the next, but then also like how long it took and how fast that transition happened.
Yeah.
We actually have.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, one of the things that helps there is to have, with each of your stages that you've defined in your revenue model, that you have a date timestamp set for when that happens so that you can measure that velocity, because it's more difficult to measure. Not everyone has, RCE, RCA. And so if you have those date timestamps, you're able to start doing so.
Yeah. So moving on to the next phase of this discussion, how do lead lifecycle stages really tie into the revenue cycle modeler?
And we could have a whole conversation on revenue cycle modeler that we don't have time for at this point.
Yeah. I'm looking at the clock and saying, wow, we're 3 minutes shy. I'm wondering if we should maybe just truncate this and pick it up where we left off, maybe on the next chat. What do you guys think?
Halloween edition.
Yeah, Halloween edition, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna have to continue this chat, and I think we knew this going into the chat. We knew that this was gonna be a big topic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I'm not corporate anymore, but I will say I'm definitely aligned to that, and I'm gonna check off my buzzword bingo card for saying that. But yeah, this has been another amazing crew chat, I think. And, we'll be posting this in the community over the weekend. We look forward to any thoughts or feedback you may have. We'll pick up talking about the revenue cycle modeler in the next episode. But yeah, we look forward to talking to you guys soon.